Well, good morning, Matt. Here we are again.
Morning.
And tell everyone your name.
Matt Elkins, I'm the commander for the Greater Lowell Veterans Council.
Gay Corey, Direct Access Television. Bob Corey, our Air Force veteran also, and he's behind the camera today. So imagine 77 years ago, Pearl Harbor Day, on December 7th, 1941. I believe that's when it occurred.
Yes, it did.
So tell us about the program today.
We're actually here to honor our World War II veterans, to remember what happened on Pearl Harbor. Actually, as part of the program, I got a lot of the old propaganda posters, on a slideshow.
I think I have a hat like that.
Just to kind of show the way things were back then, and how they tried to work the war effort. But today we have an accountment of the bodies recovered and identified from Pearl Harbor and I believe other parts of the war.
Do we know exactly how many gave the ultimate sacrifice?
I don't have that number, but the person from POW MIA, they might have that number. But then after that, our second speaker is a sergeant from the Army. He's going to speak. First time we've had someone from the active services speak, as far as at least since I've been commander. So I'm glad to have that. Then we have.
How long have you been commander?
This is my third year.
Wow.
I just started my third year in September.
Good for you.
So thank you. And then we're supposed to have Congresswoman-elect Lori Trahan.
Yes.
Speak, and to round off the speakers, we have a woman that was born in 1947. I know it was after the war, but she was born in Poland, and her family are Jewish survivors of the Nazis.
Wow.
So she's going to talk about, she was like, well, why me? I said, well, Pearl Harbor changed the world.
Absolutely.
Before Pearl Harbor, Europe had fallen, Western Russia had fallen, England was barely holding on, and then we got attacked, and the war changed.
Absolutely.
And people forget that even North Africa fell to the Nazis.
I don't think they take that into consideration.
No. Well, if you look at what the Nazis did and compare that to older maps, basically the ancient world was taken over by the Germans, or the Nazis, not necessarily the Germans. A lot of people don't make that distinction.
Right.
But so she's going to talk about her family story and stories from people that survived that.
That's true.
To bring a little bit more humanity to the day. Oh, we got ROTC protect. It's okay.
Little ROTC joining us here.
Yep. So they're great. They're always here for us. But and then we have a couple of videos. The first video is going to be actual war footage from World War II, and it'll show the history of it. And then there's a dedication video. It's a song. There's a young woman sitting at a piano, and the song's dedicated to Pearl Harbor and World War II veterans.
Do we know what that song was?
It'll be on the screen. Honestly,
can you hum a little there, Matt?
No. No. I found it, I put it on, and I moved on to the next thing.
Knew I'd put you on the spot, huh?
Oh, yeah. I don't want to take away from the video.
No, I know. Absolutely not. Will there be words on the bottom to sing along, or probably not?
I don't remember, to be quite honest.
Remember Mitch Miller?
Huh?
Do you remember Mitch Miller?
Mitch Miller. I know the name.
The bouncing ball.
Oh.
Used to sing along.
I remember the bouncing balls. So, no bouncing balls today.
No bouncing balls today. So now, what other groups do we have here today? We have the American Legion.
Yeah, well, all right. We have American Legion, Marine Corps League, Patton Memorial Society, Merrimack Valley Vietnam Veterans. We have, let's see, who else? Actually, I see outside in the Hall of Flags, there's a member from the Lowell Veterans Commission coming in. VFW 9307 from Drake is here. Heart of the Traveling Soldier brought their World War II,
Dave Suzy.
Yes, a great guy. Actually, the Drake VSO just came in.
Oh. Now where is?
Walking right there.
Oh.
Jeff Hollett.
Right there with the black jacket on?
Yep. If you want, I can call him over. So,
Well, it'll get you off the hook.
no, but we also
No, we
have.
can actually talk to him and see what,
Okay.
how he helps the veterans too.
Okay, and we also have the volunteer, the Greater Lowell Veterans Council's volunteer corps here, helping out behind the scenes. So, we've got a good group of people here.
And of course, we have Jess.
Yes, she's the president of the volunteer corps.
We will get out to talk to
Okay, hopefully, yes.
We will,
You
definitely.
got to put her on the spot this time. And we actually have one World War II veteran with us today.
We do.
Hoping to have at least one other. But Mr. Nerozevitz, I have a bit of a bio on him that I'll be.
Where is he?
He's the gentleman over there with the World War II hat, standing on the other side of Buddy.
Oh. What's his first name?
Henry, I think. I have it. Listed.
I think Bob and I did a show with him at Drake at Access Television.
Okay.
We did.
Yeah, he's
And
a nice
he
guy.
got several medals. I remember that.
Yeah, I actually have what he got, listed out.
That's
We
great.
usually have Mr. Waller with his family here.
Oh, is he here? Is he
Unfortunately, I don't see him. I don't see him here yet.
Oh, we're good friends with Mr. Lowell.
So hopefully, he shows up. He's the life of the party.
Oh, he is.
It's not a get together unless he's there.
He
So-
loves to be interviewed.
Oh yeah.
He does.
Yeah,
He likes to talk.
He's a great guy. I've
He
known
is
the
a
family for a
sweetheart.
while now.
Yeah.
So,
Known him for years.
yeah.
Did a show with him with a show we used to do called Farmer Dave.
Okay.
And since he's a farmer,
Oh,
He was,
that I didn't know.
yes,
No.
he's a farmer. And so he was out in the field teaching me how to do a polka.
Really?
And no music necessary. He just dances wherever he wants.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. That's the kind of person he is.
He is just
So,
like that. Very
but
nice
yeah,
family, though.
we have a lot of people here.
You
Actually,
dance?
Not in front of people.
I figured we were on the subject. I just kind of throw that in at you, Matt,
Let's see here. Let's see. We do have the fire chief, the Lowell fire chief, with us today too.
Oh, he's up there?
Yeah, he's out in the hallway there.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see him. The white hat.
Yep. So, we actually can't tell, but that might be a Gold Star out there. But we do have, we are expecting to have some Gold Star families, members. So yeah, we have a really good, cross section of the veteran community and families and everything else. So.
Well, once again, we'd like to thank you for inviting Bob and I back here.
No,
I mean,
always.
we did the last one with you, and we enjoy your company, and we enjoy doing this with the veterans, and Bob being a veteran himself, and you also.
Love having you here. Hopefully, you'll come to all of our things. But, as I was saying, next summer, 2019, we're actually going to be celebrating our centennial.
Oh, that'll
So
be fun.
I'd love to have you come back and, do both Memorial Day and our centennial.
That would be so much fun.
Well,
Let us know.
yeah,
when.
I definitely will.
All right.
So,
Okay, so I guess we'll wait for Bob's giving us the wrap-up sign, so we're just going to wrap it up right now and wait for folks to come in, and thank you for inviting us, and we look forward to seeing the program.
thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks. Good morning. On behalf of the Greater Lowell Veteran Council, I would like to welcome and thank you for attending our annual Pearl Harbor Remembrance. If everyone could please stand for a moment of silence in memory of former President Bush, World War II pilot who recently passed, and those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. Thank you, and please remain seated. Standing. Sergeant at Arms. Please present the colors that you're ready.
Color guy. Hold color. Other guy. Head. Up. Harry. Other. Over. Out. Feet down. Up.
Sergeant at Arms.
Be and
Please
arms.
escort Mr. Lowell for the national anthem.
Be and arms.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Two. Order. Arms. Eight. Forward. Arch.
Sergeant at Arms. Please escort Richard Duchamp, chaplain of the day, to the podium.
We are gathered today under the watchful eye of a high spirit to remember and honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice on this day 77 years ago, and those who answered the call, sacrificed, defended, and preserved our freedom here, and those who went to defend in far-off lands. Let us not forget, but remember our POW MIAs, and those who continue in the tradition of World War II veterans to defend freedom for others, and they served in far-off lands and paid the ultimate sacrifice, their lives, so that we and others may be free today. Amen.
Sergeant at Arms. If you can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everybody face the flag. Hand salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Two.
Everyone be seated, please. Before I begin with the acknowledgements of our attendees today, there's one that I would like to especially bring note to. World War II veteran Henry, and I apologize if I mistaken the pronunciation, Nerezevets. Henry, where are you? Okay, I know Henry was here. Where is he? Oh, right over there. Henry, stand up, please. Mr. Nevezevich served in the European Theater, 276th Armored Field Battalion, 3rd Army under General Patton. He was awarded the Bronze Star, and when speaking with him one day, he had told me that he had never gotten a scratch during the war, and that is luck. And that continues today, and if I'm correct, Mr. Nevezevich, you're 102? Yeah, he's 102 years old. And unless anything's changed, he's still independent, taking care of himself, and going strong. And we look forward to having you here for many, many more years. Thank you, sir. Greater Lowell Veteran Council, officers and trustees and appointees, myself, Matt Elkins, Commander, Steve Shadow Fitzgerald, Vice Commander, Dick Dusham, Quartermaster, Billy Zune, Chaplain, Joe Zangri, Judge Advocate, Ron Roy, Sergeant-at-Arms, Richard Howe, Junior Historian, Sean Farnham, Adjutant, Peter Manning, Trustee, Jerry Dunn, Trustee, Joe Monanza, Trustee, Mike Maker Peasley, GLVC Lowell Memorial Auditorium Trustee. Our member organizations are American Legion Post 87 Lowell, 212 Chelmsford, 221 Bedford, 247 Tingsboro, 259 Tewksbury, 313 North Chelmsford, 315 Dracut, American Armenian Veterans, Disabled American Veterans, 25 Lowell, 47 Chelmsford, Franco-American War Veterans, Greek-American Veterans, Heart of the Traveling Soldier, Jewish War Veterans, Korean War Veterans, Marine Corps League, Merrimack Valley Vietnam Veterans, Nam Knights of Merrimack Valley, Polish American Veterans, Portuguese American Veterans, VFW Post 662 Lowell, and 9307 Dracut. And recently, last month, we had a new member, the mission continues, join us as well. We have Congresswoman-elect Lori Trahan with us today. Representative Roddy Mum. Representative David Nagel. Lowell City Council Mayor William Samaras. And I know we have the Lowell Fire Chief around here somewhere. Chief, where are you? No? Oh, okay. Yeah, let's give him a round. He was here earlier. The organizations with us today: Lowell Housing Authority, Lowell Veterans Commission, Neshoba Valley Technical High School Committee, Patton Memorial Society, the Veteran Community Care Center, which is an aspect of the VA. The Veteran Service Officers we have with us today is Jeffrey Hollett from Dracut. Honor Guard was provided by Lowell High School, JROTC. Members of the Active Army. Let's see here. Buglers are Colonel Sam Polton. And Sergeant, you're going to be putting together my fire team, correct? Correct. Outstanding. Our singers, Michael Lowell, which is, and I have been continuously corrected on this one, so I'm hoping to get this one right. Director of Business Operations, Lowell Cemetery. Catering was done by Primo Pizzas and Dracut. And I would also like to give a special thank you to Steve Pertel and the LMA staff, Lowell Telecommunications, the Lowell Sun, Dracut Access TV, Carbon Colors for the programs, Heart of the Traveling Soldier for the historical display for the World War II memorabilia, Eric Lamache for donating the Navy flag, which we have hanging from the balcony, and the Greater Lowell Veteran Council's Volunteer Corps. No applause for the next, please. We have the POW MIA National League of Families and the Gold Star Families. If I've missed anybody, please bring it to my attention and I will acknowledge you. Sergeant Arms. Prepare for the wreath laying, the Gold Star. Thank you.
Where's the read out front?
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot.
It wasn't brought in. It's still over. Is it? Yeah. We would put it on. It's already in the left corner. Okay. It's still showing there.
At this time, the Sergeant at Arms is just going to be going with a member of the Gold Stars to place a wreath at one of the memorial spots out in the Hall of Flags. And if I saw correctly, a member of the Air Force had walked in while I was going through the acknowledgements. While the sergeant's out there doing that, before we start our speaking program, if Mr. Gaffney from the Lowell Veterans Commission could come to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jay Gaffney. I am honored to serve on the City of Lowell Veterans Commission, and I'm also a member of two outstanding organizations that are represented here today, the Merrimack Valley Vietnam Veterans and the Lowell Veterans of Foreign War Post 662. Last week, our family got some good news. A plane carrying my nephew James arrived at Fort Benning, Georgia. He had completed a year's service with the 1st Advisory Battalion in Afghanistan. James served with the 1st Advisory Battalion. In another month and a half, we are going to get some more good news. My nephew John Gaffney, who is also a Ranger, an Army Ranger Infantry First Lieutenant, will be returning from his tour in Afghanistan with the 4th Infantry Division. John, who is my godson, and James, my nephew, are the children of of Kevin and Kathy of Judge Kevin and Kathy Gaffney. Kevin is a retired Army officer and is a member of the American Legion. I hope everybody would join with me in congratulating James on a job well done and welcoming home, and also wishing Godspeed and safe home to my godson John. We thank them both for their courage and their service.
Okay. Still waiting for my Sergeant at Arms. Actually, Staff Sergeant, new Sergeant or Staff Sergeant, either or, could you actually escort Ms. Dibbs to the podium, since my Sergeant at Arms is on other duty at this time?
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Zibb, and I am with the National League of Families POW MIAs Southeast Asia. I just want to update everybody for the numbers of recoveries and identifications from World War II. These identifications are through May 24th and December 6th. For World War II, they have identified 45. So we have 45 World War II that came home. The Oklahoma is part of World War II, but I just kind of have a special part of my heart for the teams that are doing the identifications for the Oklahoma. These gentlemen have been in the cemetery in Hawaii, and they were able to excavate, and they are now being identified at the old Air Force Base in Nebraska. So from May 24th through December 6th, we have had 51 identifications for the Oklahoma, and I think that is so amazing that they've been able to get these numbers. So altogether from the Oklahoma, it's 121 identifications. They've also did a identification that sailor was on the Colorado. The work that these gentlemen do are unbelievable, and the sacrifice they make being away from their families to do these identifications. So the number for World War II is 72,855 now. So next event that we have, I will update what's going on. My other thing that I really would like to say is that if anybody has an MIA family member from any war, from Korea, World War I, World War II, that if they have not done DNA, please do the DNA so they can identify. I've heard some different comments, the reason why, that they haven't, or so on and so forth, but they'll never be identified if they don't have DNA. Somebody did say to me, well, if they have dog tags on, that's enough. They will not identify with somebody with a set of dog tags on. They have to go through the whole process of DNA to make final decisions. So just keep that in mind if you know of an MIA family that has not done DNA. The other thing I'd just like to turn around and say, this is World War II. Mom, Dad, they're both World War II Navy. Thank you for your service, and I am proud of you.
Thank you. And when my Sergeant at Arms is done handing out flowers, if he could fall into the front of the podium.
Did I forget anybody?
I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Fall in, Sergeant. Sergeant at Arms.
Sorry.
Trouble with dealing with Marines. Sergeant at Arms, if you could please escort Sergeant Osborne, U.S. Army, to the podium.
All right, sir.
Sergeant, podium's yours.
Good morning, and thank you for attending today's ceremony. Thank you, Councilwoman-elect Lori Trahan, Representative Tom Golden, Representative David Nagel, and Representative Randy Mom, and to all our special guests, Staff Sergeant Retired Henry Neverzetz, and all veterans in attendance. We are gathered here today to ceremony to pay tribute to all for their actions on December 7th, 1941, where over 2,400 service members and civilians made the ultimate sacrifice and over 1,000 more were wounded. We would also like to recognize the sacrifices made by those brave men and women who survived that infamous attack that early December morning. On that day, 77 years ago, the first wave of 183 Imperial Japanese aircrafts took off from 6 aircraft carriers 200 miles north of Oahu. High-altitude bombers, torpedo planes, dive bombers, and fighters became the messengers for a declaration of war on the United States of America. The island of Oahu was ground zero for our nation's entrance into World War II. It was a priority target and the first hit in a synchronized aerial attack on each of the island's military airfields. The Japanese Empire wanted to ensure they had air superiority so that they can then hit their primary target, the Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. 18 American ships and over 260 airplanes were either damaged or destroyed. Almost half of the casualties at Pearl Harbor occurred on the naval battleship, the USS Arizona, which was hit 4 times by Japanese bombers. Aboard the USS Arizona were 23 sets of brothers, all of whom were killed that day. Today, we commemorate the 77th anniversary of this, the date which will live in infamy. As President Franklin D. Roosevelt described it, on December 8th, 1941. In addition to Pearl Harbor, Wheeler Army Airfield, which is approximately 15 miles north of Pearl Harbor, and Hickam Airfield, which is adjacent to Pearl Harbor, were primary targets. Wheeler housed fighter crafts that could challenge the airstrike, and Hickam housed bombers that could counterattack the Japanese fleet. Wheeler was the site of the first attack on that day and was home to the Army's Air Corps' 14th Pursuit Wing and 15th and 18th Pursuit Groups, the primary fighter base for the Army Air Corps on Oahu, and well over 100 aircrafts charged with the defense of the Hawaiian Islands. Wheeler Hangar 1 and 3 were bombed and strafed with machine gun fire, the scars of which can still be seen today. Then by 8:50 a.m., Wheeler was hit again by a second wave of Imperial Japanese aircrafts that lasted nearly an hour. The destruction was absolute. Twisted steel beams and blown-out windows were the remains of 2 hangars. Temporary tent areas built for enlisted personnel were reduced to ash. Burned-out aircraft wreckage filled the tarmac and the hangars. Over 30 soldiers were killed and many more injured. However, 14 pilots from Wheeler and satellite airfields around Oahu courageously manned what undamaged fighters were left to challenge the attack as it occurred. Many engaged the Japanese in furious dogfights and scored some of the first victories of the World War II. Bravery was a common virtue among all services that day, including the Army, with 5 Distinguished Service Crosses and 65 Civil Star medals were awarded to Army personnel for their brave actions. The post-war period of regional peace can never be taken for granted. This anniversary allows us all to reflect and understand the devastating truths of war and the necessity to find peaceful paths for our nation and future generations. I'd like now to take a moment and offer my gratitude to the veterans who could join us here today, as well as those who couldn't. On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you all for your service and sacrifice. We are honored by your presence. Thank you.
Sergeant Arms, don't go too far. If you could please escort Congresswoman-elect Lori Trahan to the podium. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Is it still morning?
It's morning somewhere. Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you for having me here today. I want to thank the Greater Lowell Veterans Council for inviting me to be a part of this ceremony. Today we gather to honor those 2,403 brave souls we lost on December 7th, 1941, during a surprise Japanese attack on the Naval Station Pearl in Hawaii and the start of World War II. Now, I had the pleasure of visiting World War II valor at the Pacific National Monument a few years ago, and what was most striking to me about that visit was how the USS Missouri bow faces the monument to watch over the remains of the heroes that we lost on the USS Arizona, memorializing our heroes in history. Today is a day to also pay gratitude to all of those who served in World War II. Heroes like Henry Nereshevitz, Barbara's parents, and all of you who have loved ones who served, truly our greatest generation in this country, whose stories of bravery and courage must be told, remembered, and honored on days like today and whenever we have the opportunity. This week we mourn the loss of a true American war hero, President George H.W. Bush, the last of the living presidents to have served our country in World War II. We're reminded of his bravery at Chichijima as the youngest pilot in the U.S. Navy and the only airman in the invasion to evade capture and horrific death at the hands of our then enemy. He flew 58 combat missions, logging almost 1,300 hours of flight time, and earned the Distinguished Flying Cross for his service. We know that there are so many stories of servicemen and women whose bravery, courage, and toughness who fought in World War II to protect our freedom, protect our liberty, for we have so many of those heroes who come from our communities. So on days like today, it is our duty to keep their stories alive, to honor their sacrifice, and to offer our humble gratitude. Thank you to all of you, those who have served, those who are still serving, and your families. We owe you a debt of gratitude today and every day. And God bless you all. Thank you.
Sergeant Arms. Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Powers to the podium. He's going to escort you.
Good morning. We've already established it was still morning, right? I'm here just for a moment to introduce my wife, who has never spoken publicly before, and since I have a little less trouble with it, I figured, or she figured, that I could introduce her. Somebody did. For her discussion about the other side of the earth from Pearl Harbor, when I met Rita 45 years ago, I didn't know much about her family. I found out after the fact that she was an immigrant from Poland, born in Russia, and that her father had lived through the Holocaust as a Jew in a horrible way, and most of her family was killed during the Holocaust on both sides of the family. And it's important to talk about. It's important not to forget that as much as everything else. My dad was a physician on the Queen Mary during the Second World War for a number of years and was PTSD for the rest of his life. So I'm in touch with that. But I work with quite a number of veterans as a psychologist. So my wife's ready to go now because she's bored with what I have to say, and it's very important information, and I hope you hear it well and are entertained by it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken. I think I should probably put this down, right? He's a little taller than I am.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. This is worse than I thought. Okay. Thank you, Ken. And first of all, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation and gratitude for all the service from all of you and our whole American military, because without you, so many more people would have perished. And of course, we should think about those who are no longer with us also, and extend our gratitude for their dedication. I'm here today to give you a more personal story, not about me, it's about my dad. It's an abbreviated story, obviously. My father's life, he passed away 6 years ago, and he lived till the ripe age of 96. His name was Boris. I believe his longevity could be attributed not only to his strong survival skills, but also to having been taken very good care of by his wife, Rose, who was my mom, and possibly by the wine and jarred pickles he made, and I would find them in his kitchen floor and when he was living alone. Another very important coping skill that my dad had was writing poetry from his adolescence until later years. In those poems, he was able to express his painful memories of before, during, and after the war. He also expressed other themes in his poetry, such as nature, romance, life, death, and God. Boris was born in Leszko, Poland, located in the southeast. He came from a family that was desperately poor. His mom was religious, very religious. Thus, Boris attended the synagogue morning and night. He had two sisters, one older, one younger, and a younger brother. The whole family lived in a large room in the basement of his grandparents' home. The room served both as a bedroom and a kitchen. The grandparents lived upstairs. While attending school, the Polish boys would throw stones and call my father and his friends names because he was Jewish. He would look at the school and wish that he was part of it. At his school, some of the teachers were so strict that they weren't satisfied, and if they weren't satisfied with the students' work, they would hit them so hard with a branch that the students would lose their breath. Because of this, Boris lost his appetite for school and began to miss a lot, and only to face more punishment when he returned. Both Boris's parents died of tuberculosis by the time he was 11. His mom died at 8. He remembers his grandmother standing over Mom's bed praying and his sisters crying. Once both parents passed, the oldest sister tried to take care of all of them. Boris felt that he was a burden to her and soon was forced to leave after a short while because there was a shortage of food and space. In those days, Jewish boys without a family were sent to a town of Bobov. He was given a piece of paper from the temple to give to the temple there. Since he had no money, he got on the train and ended up hid himself under the bench. A few of the passengers were aware, and they told him when he arrived. He gave the note to Bobov Rabbi, who gave him some money to buy some bread and butter. He often was hungry. From here on, Boris stayed with various families, strangers, for a period of time. The families fed him and took care of him. At times, he still went hungry. Yet he felt like something was missing from his life. Boris and his friends overheard the conditions of living were better in Krakow, so the family he stayed with gave him a ticket, and he was actually able to sit on a bench on the train. Boris looked for a family that was a distant relative of his, and they received him very well by feeding him homemade chicken soup. There was no room other than the floor for him to sleep, however. So again, he was sent from one family to another until he started to get sick and was sent to a sanitarium. The hospital was located in the mountains where the air was good for healing because the doctor found a dark spot on his lungs. The doctor took very good care of him with medications, released him and with a note of good health, and Boris was sent yet to another town of Plaszow, a southern suburb of Krakow, to another clinic where he was then placed in an orphanage because he was still young. The orphanage, which was financially supported by Jewish philanthropists. 10 years later, this orphanage became a Nazi concentration camp. Boris remained there from 1933 to 1937. In spare time, he worked as a tailor and a shoemaker. He had a wonderful mentor there while he attended school, where in 1 year he finished and took exams for 3 remaining grades. Now, 7th grade in Poland was equivalent to a 12th in America. Because he did really well, he received a golden pen, which he held on to for a very, very long time. He also learned how to play a mandolin at this school and had begun writing poetry and read many, many books. Boris claimed that these were some of the best years of his life. He learned good manners, discipline, and learning in general. In 1937, Boris moved with 2 other friends, of whom one became a diplomat to Austria. They would go to inexpensive places to eat and enjoy their camaraderie. In September of 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Polish army was not strong enough to resist. In addition to a radio that Boris and his friends owned, there were loud announcements over the speaker, as we've all heard, I'm sure, in the past, about the city and its invasion. Boris and his friend Dolok decided to run away towards the Russian border for safety. They would run 7 to 10 miles in a day, hungry and exhausted. Boris' legs were swollen. They knocked on a few country doors, and after some reluctance, one let them sleep in a cellar, and they received meager food rationings, such as potatoes, butter, and I think it was milk. They left the following day. They would also allow them in because the Germans were flying overhead, and they felt bad for them. They left the following day and reached a small town with about 40 houses located near a forest. They were able to stay for a day with two strangers. Soon, all the houses were flattened by German planes. Boris watched an elderly man who was standing outside with 2 children, shot down while with his hands raised to God, praying. Excuse me. Somehow he and his friends were spared. They slept in the forest that night. When it became quiet, they decided to return to Krakow as they were surrounded by German forces. Unfortunately, at one point, Boris was ordered to pick up dead bodies and place them on the truck, German truck. They actually let him go. Again, he survived. He got on a freight train, since he was lost. He was dropped off in Krakow and quickly ran to see his sisters, who were now living with strangers and thought he was dead. There wasn't much food for everyone, and Boris waited a whole night just to get a loaf of bread. Before he was able to get it, however, a soldier pulled him out of line and kicked him in his back. Once the Germans occupied Krakow, he had decided to run away to Russia again. His sisters and brother refused to go with him. Later in America, he found out that both his sisters were hung by the Nazis. He also found out that his brother was shot to death since he was not able to keep up with the work detail. Here again, destitute and lonely, he found a friend who had a carriage and horses to start their travel until the horse was shot at and died. They reached a river, and while crossing the river on the border, a Russian soldier pointed a rifle at him and yelled out to Boris, pointed a rifle at Boris. And Boris yelled out to the Russian soldier, "Go ahead, shoot me. I'm not going back, and if I go, I'm going to get shot there anyhow." So the soldier let him go. Again, he survived and ended up in Pushkino, where he stayed with yet another family and ended up catching malaria. He was given Chinese medications at the hospital. People were dying like flies from malaria, yet he was fortunate to survive, ending up with jaundice. While sick, he remembers having awful nightmares. Upon reaching Uzbekistan, he met his future wife, Rose, my mom, who was born in Odessa. They married, and after giving birth to me, In Lwów, my dad convinced my mom to return to Poland, hoping he would locate the rest of his family, but also hoping to provide better life for his immediate family. All along, he was able to work as a cobbler, creating top shoe designs. I remember helping him put the shoes together, and they were beautiful and stylish with detail. In 1952, my mother gave birth to my twin brothers. Unfortunately, she suffered postpartum depression, and the children had to be taken away elsewhere for a while. My dad believes that this triggered my mother's depression, of course, in addition to the war and being taken to a country away from her family, a new country. Still not satisfied, at the end of 1961, he and my mom decided to leave for America, the land of freedom and opportunities. It took 14 days for us to get on a ship called Rendem. Initially, both he and Rose worked in a shoe and clothing factory by piecework, which meant that the faster you worked, the more money you were paid. During those days, he made friends with a man who was in the concentration camp in Plaszow. The man shared a story with my dad that he had to watch the Germans round up 20 people and hang them publicly due to someone trying to escape. This was supposed to be a lesson for the remaining folks. Boris found out that his sisters were among the 20. After working hard, they saved some money and purchased a variety store which required 16-hour days, 7 days a week. After some years, he sold the store when my mom became very sick. She had schizophrenia, and in those days, it was very difficult to treat. Rose passed away tragically, but that's another story in itself. After her death, Boris found a subsidized apartment where he met some nice people and made some human connections. In spite of his loneliness and solace, the paper, pencil, and a dictionary kept him going. He began writing poetry, as mentioned before, where he was able to express himself mostly about youth and aging and life in general. He met a Mr. John Court from Catholic Charities there, who also was a published writer. He would visit my dad frequently for 4 years until Mr. Court's death. He was 102. Together, they would discuss religion, spirituality, war, joys and sorrows, and Catholic and Jewish concepts and beliefs. My dad cherished that friendship. My dad told Mr. Court that his wounds in his heart never healed with memories of people he loved and lost. Finally, in 2007, his poems were published in English in the United States. I would like to quote just one of the verses of his poems called To a Friend. There is still a long race to be run and a lot to be done. Do not haste to an unknown place, the ground of which all of us are bound. We have our orders to obey. That means patience. Here we stay. The world is endlessly renewing. The adventures are full of excitement, all kinds of potential enlightenment. And we, the inhabitants of this globe, still have many mysteries to probe. As the years pass, it is more and more difficult to find those who survived the Holocaust. As we all know, 6 million Jews were killed during the war. However, we can't forget that it wasn't just the Jewish people. It is estimated that 60 to 80 million people have perished. Thus, we must never, never forget what happened and never allow of anything like this to happen again. I thank you again for your service. Without you, he wouldn't have made it, and I wouldn't be here. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Sergeant Arms. Please escort Mr. Lowell to the podium again, please.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Please sit. Normally at this point in the program, I'd say a few words, but at this point, hearing from Mr. and Mrs. Powers, especially the story Mrs. Powers recounted, I wouldn't know what else to say. And nothing else that I could say could truly capture the importance and impact the attack on Pearl Harbor had on the world, and the countless untold stories, especially since that event sent the American forces into Europe to liberate Europe so that your family and many others could survive.
Thank you.
The only thing that I could think of to add to the immeasurable human impact that day had was that a cashier up in Nashua, Nashua Wendy's, that I sometimes frequent, whenever I go in, she always thanks me for my service with such pride and emotion. The last time I was there, she told me that she was from the Netherlands. She paused and said that her grandmother raised her to always thank service members and veterans because it was the Americans that had liberated her and her country from the oppression and the horror of the Nazis. She and her grandmother credit the American forces for their lives and cherish every day of their life, and are thankful for those who have served since then and continue to serve to protect ours and others' freedom. Today, the first video chronicles the history of World War II, from the Treaty of Versailles to the Japanese surrender, using actual World War II footage. The second is a song dedicated to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. I ask that all remember that freedom is not free, but paid for with blood, sacrifice, and lives. Thank you.
Go on, live your life to the fullest. Hold your dreams so people can see you. Live a life with every given day. Have you tried for the price of yourself? And there was never meant to be so. How can you cry before saying goodbye to someone you just know? The footprints are gone, but the spirit lives on in a flag in my front yard. And for this freedom I know, there's something we owe to the ones that fought so hard. Battles like these are remembered. No time heals or leaves a scar. But there's the bittersweet taste of freedom. Those moments that define who we are. But is there a way we can ever escape? Oh, thanks for what you've done. There's a flag written in the darkness. There's a song beneath these waves. I hear the voice of 1,000 soldiers crying memory on their graves. How many gone? Don't forget me. How many lost the marching remains? And she will testify as the years roll by to let There's a flag within the darkness. There's a song beneath these waves. I hear the voice of 1,000 soldiers that cry how many gone? Don't forget me. How many lost the marching remains? And she will testify as the years roll by. She will So go on, live your life to the fullest. Hold your dreams so people can see you. Live life with every given day. 'Cause is there really any better way we can say thanks for what you've done?
Sergeant Arms. Please escort Chaplain of the Day, Richard Duchamp, to the podium.
All rise. Cover.
As we part this place and company, may our higher spirit guide us and give us the humility not to take for granted the freedom and rights our brave servicemen and women have given us, but to cherish it every moment of our lives. May we be guided that our actions and lives to honor their sacrifices. Amen.
We will now go out to the river for water ceremony and firing and taps. The water ceremony is a naval tradition that honors the fallen. The firing is also a memory of those who have fallen, dated back to the Roman times, where the soldier clearing the bodies from the field, if they knew the fallen, would call out their name 3 times in honor of their sacrifice. Taps again remembers all of those who had fallen. After the ceremony, outside, we invite you back in and join us for lunch. Thank you for attending. See you outside.
Fine detail, front center. Fine detail, hand hut. Port arms. Half right. Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim, fire. Ready, aim. Half left. Breathe in, out. Order, arms. Parade, rest. Fine detail, can hut, dismiss.
Well, Jessica, we finally get to talk to you.
Yeah, finally. I'm sorry that you weren't able to last event because I was just so busy.
I know. Well, Jessica, how long have you been involved with the Greater Lowell Veterans?
I quite don't remember that, but I believe it was around 2017, maybe 2016 that I first started, because I originally started under previous command with Bob Page's wife, Mrs. Page, or Amarine Page, and I helped her with the food and stuff. But when Matt Elkins took command, he asked me to continue doing the volunteer stuff. I didn't have the number of her friends that she had, so I asked them, since I worked with the Drake American Legion since I was 17.
Oh, wow.
And my first event was at Chicken Barbecue, and I knew about the auxiliary by working with them. So I asked him if I could make an auxiliary, but for the council. But not just to family members, to everyone in the community. And I didn't want any fees, so anyone can join and not hesitate to join.
Oh, that's nice. So tell everybody your whole name.
My name's Jessica Wheeler. I am the president for the Greater Lowell Veterans Council Volunteer Corps. And that was created in May of 2017, I believe it was.
Wow. Wow, you do an outstanding job. So you have multitasking to do over here.
Oh yes, I make sure everyone's comfortable, make sure the food's all prepped, the sign in, the volunteers are okay, know what they're doing. It's always a pleasure. I love helping out. I love the veterans. I'm truly thankful for their sacrifice for me and others to live in this country and be free and all that.
Absolutely. So we thank you for having us over here. Thank you and Matt for inviting Bob and I over here for the second time, and we'll certainly come back again if you'll have us.
Sure. I'd love to have you guys here, like I said earlier. It's always great talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much. We're glad you're comfortable with us. So anyway, if we don't see you, I don't know when the next event is, but have a wonderful holiday.
You too. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you. The same to you, Jess.
Thank you.
Nice talking with you.
Nice talking to you too.
Well, Bob, it was really cold out there. What a lovely ceremony, though.
Yes, it was.
Very nice ceremony.
I like that chronicle at the end there, all the war and everything.
Yeah, that was a beautiful story. Thank you very much for that.
Good crowd.
Yeah, they had a pretty good crowd today.
This was during the week.
Yeah, it's
A lot of
because it's
people
on a
working.
Friday. But anyway, we'd like to thank you to all of our veterans,
Those are
past
services
and present, and those who have gave the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you for your service.
Oh, you're welcome.
Sure.
For yours too.
Thanks. Well, I was a civilian working for the Air Force, so
In Okinawa.
in Okinawa.
I was stationed in Germany.
You were?
Yes.
You were in Germany. You see, we have our coats on because we just went outside to do the ceremony, and we're still very, very cold. But anyway, we'd like to thank Matt for inviting us, the Lowell Veterans Council,
For the remembrance of Pearl Harbor.
for the members of Pearl Harbor, for everyone who took part in today's event, and thank you very much.
So, from Bob.
And Gay, thanks for joining us.